Hey, thank you for tuning into another episode of the AutoFix Advisor Cast with your host, Michael Doherty. Hope everyone's doing well and staying cool. Literally, we're experiencing quite a heat wave across the United States this past week, especially record highs just kind of popping up everywhere. And hopefully you're working in a shop that has AC, right? Very important, not only in the front end but for your technicians as well. If your shop does not have AC for the technicians, I would highly recommend looking into getting one of the mobile, I call them porta-cools. Really kind of unique. Just, order one, add some water, and, let it do its magic. So I'm sure your technicians will appreciate that. And I'm sure you could incorporate somewhere into every RO, maybe an additional shop supplies, $2, something of that nature to kind of cover that expense overall. I think they have different models. They run from $1,000 up to $2,000, but again, it's called Portacool, and definitely worth looking into. Because again, keeping the team cool back in the shop, efficiency is going to be a lot better, and they're going to be happier. But interesting, I got a phone call. Actually, I got an email this week from an existing client. They've got a shop, great shop, and they're great owners. And they actually sent me an email this past Thursday and said, "Hey, Michael, would you mind listening to our phone call on this date and this time and providing us with some feedback on the call from a perspective of capturing the vehicle? We're not getting many opportunities with these calls in general." And I guess to break it down, the phone call was a new prospect. It was a 1 minute and 12-second phone call. I don't think the service advisor did anything wrong. I just want to be very honest about that. We all have our different ways of talking to people on the phone, inviting people and things of that nature. So, again, I don't think he did anything wrong, but, kind of the phone call went this way. A lady called in and said, "Hey, my AC is not getting cool in my car. Do you guys recharge air conditioners?" And the service advisor said, "Yes, we do. We charge X for that service, and that includes up to 1 pound of Freon." The client's reply was basically, you know, just to check it. And the service advisor said, "No, that's for us to, basically recharge it with up to 1 pound of Freon. When would you like to bring the vehicle in?" They set a date, they set a time. The client explained that it was a Honda. I believe she said it was a CRV. And that, service advisor said, "Great, we'll see you then." Interesting, there wasn't a phone number that was captured from the service advisor. So I'm assuming he had caller ID, but nonetheless, I think it's always important to, establish more information, right? How'd you hear about us? And especially a contact, right? An email, a phone number, something of that nature. But again, the customer asked me to listen to this phone call and kind of give some feedback on it. So I took my time. I listened to the phone call in question, and here's kind of what I came up with. So I remember getting phone calls like these a lot when I worked at the Audi dealer, Porsche dealer, and then got more as I got into the independent scene. But I think to start off with, right, empathy is going to go a long way. So what I mean by that, right? So when the prospect or potential new client mentioned, "Hey, my AC is not cooling," a quick way to just right off the bat with some shared understanding, again, that can make a big impact right off the bat would be, "Oh no, I've been there before," right? No AC in the car, that's no fun, especially in this heat, right? Again, you're empathizing with them. You've had that experience before. And if you haven't, I'm sure you've been somewhere in someone's car that has not had the AC working. It's fairly miserable, right? So again, with this heat wave that we're having, starting off with some empathy, right? Again, "Oh man, hey, I've been there before too. You're great. No AC, not fun, especially in this heat." Just something to call it an icebreaker, right? Leading into the phone call after that, I would definitely start asking some questions, not diving right into a price point. I would make the conversation less transactional, right off the bat. And questions that I would ask that person are going to be, hey, right off the bat, what year and model vehicle do you have? Because if it's a vehicle that we don't work on, then, you're going to need to let them know that rather than get them through the price point, ask them when they can bring it in, and then ask them what kind of vehicle it is, and come to find out it's not a make or model that you work on, right? So again, right off the bat, after again building some empathy about their concern, asking them what type of vehicle it is, right? Number two, great question would be, how long has this concern been going on for? Someone might say, hey, it just happened today, or it's the first time I used the AC this year, or they might say, something along the lines of, something in that general vicinity. But again, hey, it happened last year, but I didn't get a chance to get it checked out, right? So you're kind of building a storyline and asking qualifying questions, right? Another great question, question three, have you had any AC work performed on the vehicle in the last year? And if so, what work was performed? What parts were replaced? That would be important to know, especially to the technician, on the work order. Again, building information, but also for your technician, but building rapport with the client, right? Asking them these things. And also, one thing that I've come very for sure asking people when they've got AC concerns with their vehicle is, are the fan speeds working? The volume of air coming out of the vents, is that working properly? Because again, it could be that it's not cooling, or it could be that it's not blowing the amount of air out that they want. And their description of that to you could be different. So I found out over the years, I've had people bring vehicles in, and, I'm like, we're checking the AC, we're doing putting the vent thermometer in and seeing that it's cooling great. And then you call them back and say, we're not having any issues with that. And they go, okay, well, did you try fan speed 3 or fan speed 4 or fan speed 5? And oh, okay. Well, I didn't know that's what you meant. So again, really breaking down what they're talking about, because their understanding of the situation might be different from what you're thinking the situation is. So again, asking qualifying questions, again, right off the bat, your make and model, how long's the concern been going on for? Have you had any work done to the vehicle in the last year? And if so, for that concern, what was done, what parts or parts were replaced? And especially with AC, hey, is the volume of air, are the fan speeds working properly? Because I have had vehicles in before where it's not cooling and the fan speeds aren't working properly. So, that's a little bit more than just starting off with an evac and recharge. But again, asking those questions, I feel right off the bat can shift the conversation from purely transactional to more relational, and you're increasing trust with that prospect, and also you're building value, right? Another thing is setting the expectations, clearly identifying what you are doing for that evac and recharge, right? So what I used to tell people was, if they called up with an AC concern, again, AC is not cooling, after I asked those qualifying questions, letting them know that we're going to need to start with doing level 1 AC testing. And what that is going to include is evacuating and recharging the system with up to 1 pound of Freon, also adding trace dye. And since the AC system in your vehicle is made up of both mechanical and electrical components, we'll first need to check the Freon level, just like if the AC at your house was not working. The first thing that the technician is going to do when they come out to your residence is check the Freon level to get a baseline before they can check anything else, right? So again, letting them know that there are mechanical and electrical components for their AC system in their vehicle, just like their house, and also letting them know that, we're going to check the Freon level as part of that level 1. And if we determine that the Freon level is where it needs to be, and 9 times out of 10 it isn't, but if it is where it needs to be and the system is still not cooling, then we're going to need to do probably some additional testing time to come to the root issue, right? So, what you're doing with that is you're setting the clear expectations, right? That avoids the customer being surprised if you do call them back to let them know that the Freon level was good, or you did find that the Freon level was low and that you did have to add Freon and trace dye, but we did that and the system is still not cooling, that they're not shocked to hear that you're going to need their authorization for some additional testing time to further look into the issue. I would not just give a price point of it's going to be a free on recharge at X price point and nothing else along with that, because that's kind of putting it in their head. If I'm the customer, I'm thinking they're that's going to solve my issue, right? They're giving me a price, they're telling me that's what they're going to do, and this is going to solve my issue. I think there needs to be more conversation had around, again, what exactly you're doing for that price point. But again, full transparency about the product knowledge of the system, the AC system, and again, incorporating somewhere into that conversation as it's a level one testing or evaluation time to be followed up if there's additional things that we see that might be going on with the system. So again, that they're not surprised that that price point for the evac and recharge didn't fix their issue, right? And again, there's different ways to talk to people about this. I think again, from the service advisor's perspective, again, I mentioned it a little earlier ago, but again, product knowledge, right, about the system, tonality, right? Tonality, I think, plays a very big part in prospect calling you, because when they call you, again, if it's someone that hasn't been at the shop before, I mean, they're qualifying you, right? I mean, it's an interview. They're determining if they want to do business with you, and again, building rapport right off the bat, building some empathy. I mean, it's like maybe like somebody calling up and saying, "Hey, I got a flat tire." I mean, and you're just saying, "Okay, when do you want to bring it in?" I mean, if you've been there before, it's not good, right? I mean, oh man, I'm so sorry to hear that, Mrs. Jones. I've been there before, and even if you haven't been there before, oh, Mrs. Jones, I'm so sorry to hear that. Let's see what we can figure out for you. Let's get you taken care of, right? Again, building that empathy, right? It's very important. And again, I don't think the service advisor that I was asked to listen to this call that came in from this customer did anything wrong, but for a minute and 12 seconds, it was really just more transactional. And again, there wasn't too much information conveyed to them other than what they asked for. So again, you know, the client or the prospect asked if they did AC work, if they did AC recharges. They responded back with, yes, we do that. Here's a price point. When do you want to bring it in? I just feel that there needs to be more, we'll call it filler, right? Filler in that minute and 12. I think that minute and 12 really should have been maybe a 4-minute conversation, a 5-minute conversation. And it's just my thoughts on it. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. Again, phone calls about that type of stuff. But again, final thoughts on that, product knowledge, tonality, and emotional intelligence, right? All contribute to a prospect feeling confident in doing business with your shop. The right blend of empathy, questions, and clear communication, I really feel makes all the difference in that situation. So again, whether it's AC that they're calling about, check engine light, they got a noise going on, something inside their car is not working, their radio is not working, turn signals aren't working. Again, let's really get and gather the right information, ask the right questions, and again, let them know what they're getting for their money for that price point that you're mentioning. So again, I wouldn't throw out, we'll do this for X, because I mean that kind of really sounds like you're saying that's going to fix it, and you really don't know that. So always, I would recommend saying we're going to need to do level 1 testing or level 2 testing or level 3 testing, and let them know what's involved with that. And again, you're painting the picture of what's happening with their vehicle while it's there for that price point, rather than just shouting out a number and saying we offer that service. Here's what it is. Yeah, I understand. For a brake fluid service, for an oil service, those are all things that are considered, I would say to a degree, canned jobs, right? So we can give price points, but again, over the phone, we really don't know if an evac and recharge is truly going to fix that client's concern or that prospect's concern. And, we want to get them in the door. We want to help them and do the best we can for them. But again, Service Advisor Nation, those are my thoughts on that particular phone call. Again, I think the service advisor, did a good job, but there was, I'd say, room for improvement to really, make the client feel involved in the conversation, letting them know that, hey, you called the right place. We definitely want to help you out. We want your business. Here's some qualifying questions, and let's do this, right? Let's get you in the shop. Let's figure this out. Let's fix this together. But Service Advisor Nation, thank you so much for another episode of the AutoFix Advisor Cast, and wish you a great week. and take care. All right.